Karin and I'm here to tell you my story, which is the story behind the vision for hope in the future. I grew up in a small town surrounded by extended family and neighbors that knew each other. When I was 8 years old, my father very suddenly died of a heart attack while getting ready to go to work one day. In our neighborhood, we had people that, as I walked home from school after my father died and I didn't have my mother at home anymore because she was still at work, we had a little neighbor lady called Grandma, by everyone, although no one was actually related to her. Grandma was a sweet little lady, and she would look out of her window when I walked home from school, and I'd see her look to see if my mother's car was in the driveway or not, and if it wasn't, she would open up her door and suddenly need help with baking cookies, planting gardens, any number of fun things. Over time, I stopped by her house every day after school, and we became buddies. She shared stories, she let me play with old toys from her childhood, and it was a rich, lovely relationship, and my life felt safe and stable during that time in spite of the massive change that had happened with the sudden death of my father. School continued to go well for me. Neighbors often stopped by when we were gone, and we'd come home and find some drippy faucet had quit dripping, and I remember the furnace going out one winter, and neighbors and people from our church came and fixed the furnace for us. It was just a beautiful helping tradition that went on, and it kept life feeling safe, even though our family was now kind of a needy family. In time, my mother decided that she wanted to move away so that she could get a college degree because she was worried about her ability to support my brother and I, now that she was a single parent family. When we moved away, I suddenly was in an environment where I didn't know anybody and nobody knew me. And the whole thing was pretty anxiety provoking for me. My mother was studying very hard trying to get her degree done before the little bit of life insurance money she had ran out. So she took full-time loads, and we often didn't see her. We kind of came up with supper by ourselves. I had one brother, and put ourselves to bed. During that time, I spent too much time alone for an 8 and 9-year-old child, and my school functioning went down. It was just a pretty rough time for me. My life eventually improved. I had a wonderful stepfather, and everything got better for me. However, those years where I was alone too much, I remembered them. And I guess I believe that God will take some of those hard spots in our lives to make us more sensitive to other people going through hard spots in life. When I was in high school, I found out that this neighborhood grandma had to go into a nursing home. And I went back to visit her. And as a teenager, making my first trip to a nursing home alone, this was a pretty rough experience. This was back in the day when nursing home residents were not allowed to keep their own clothes, and they all wore hospital gowns. And I remember walking down a very long hall where I was told her room was at the end of it, and seeing people in their beds with these gowns kind of falling off and yelling for help, and I thought, what a horrible place to live. When I almost got down to her room, one of the staff people said, "Did anybody check 22?" And 22 was the room number where my neighborhood grandma lived. That person beat me to the room and just went in without knocking, didn't say hello, and came out pushing my neighborhood grandma in a wheelchair. And she was saying, "Where are we going? What are we doing?" And the person didn't even respond. She just kept talking with another staff person. And I stood there thinking, I know something about loneliness, but this is a new kind of loneliness where you're surrounded by people, but somehow nobody's paying attention. And sorry, at that particular point, as a teenager, I just decided I wanted to do something about that as an adult. So I went into nursing. I can't believe all these years later, this still affects me as painfully as it did that day. But I decided to become a nurse because I would understand more about the actual needs people had and then see what could be possible for them. That would keep them in the mix of real life. Um, so as a nurse, if you fast forward my life to now, I'm a supervisor in charge of a great big unit, and there was a lovely nursing assistant, certified nursing assistant that was working one evening, and as a rule I loved it when she was working because she was so kind to people, and just her heart was really in the work, and she did the best she could, and which was very good. And but that one particular night she was not really paying attention to the residents, and she kept walking off the floor without telling me where she was going, which is grounds for firing someone as a rule. But because this was not her normal pattern, I pulled her aside and asked what was going on. And she asked me if I could come outside for a minute with her. So we made arrangements, and I went outside, and she pointed to a car, an old rusty car in the back of the parking lot that was running. We worked the evening shift. It was dark by then, very hot, steamy summer night. And she said, "My kids are in there." And still can't get through this one either, but her children were all under 5, 2 of them in diapers, and they were alone in the car. And that was daycare that night. And I looked at her and I said, "Why are they here alone?" And she said, "I have been trading off with a friend for daycare because I can't afford it. And my friend wasn't there today, and it's happened before. And when I called in at work and said I didn't have daycare for my kids, I was told that if I missed another day of daycare, I wouldn't have a job. And so I brought the kids here, and I've been running out here to make sure the car was still running because I didn't know, my gas gauge is broken. I didn't know how much was in there, and I'm trying to keep the air conditioner on for them." Well, we figured out something to do for that night and brought them into the activity area, and they watched a movie, but it wasn't something we could do every day or even long term. I went home that night pretty brokenhearted, and just sat down and started to pray and said, "God," I walked down these long halls, and resident after resident asked me why I think they're still alive when they can't help anybody. And then I see young families like this, and I know what that feels like to be the child of that young family, and I can see the frustration in that mother's eyes. There's got to be a better way we can help people. And this is before I ever had a computer, but I had my first download. And what I mean by that is, in my mind's eye, I began to see a neighborhood that had different levels of care for seniors. There were independent seniors, there were seniors who needed help, and there was housing for young families. And I knew instantly that this was a staffed setting, and that everybody was helping while being helped the way community should be. I believe strongly that when we help people, if we don't allow them to be a part of somebody else's solution, we're cheating them out of the full experience of being a human who's useful and feels like they have an important place, they belong. So the vision that I saw in my mind's eye that night, I quickly scribbled down, and that's what we're doing at Hope in the Future. It took me a while to get the nerve up to go talk to people about this project, because I'm not a business person, and I also don't have big resources financially. So in fact, I often tell people I felt like I was maybe going out like the guys trying to get the Jamaican bobsled team going, with people laughing at them as they went. Fortunately, that never happened. People were very supportive, but they always said this will be hard, and unless you get a lot of help, it's never going to happen, because there's no funding for this kind of work. What we're doing is an intergenerational community, a therapeutic, interactive, intergenerational neighborhood, which is a 10. And this neighborhood, you can find the model on other spots on our website, but the idea is we have living spaces and we have community spaces, indoor and outdoor, where people will develop relationships naturally around their interests and kind of the work of life. And that's our story. We've been at it for 12 years now. We're heading into a new phase that's going to need a new kind of community development. We've had over 300 volunteers out here with us this year. Finances have come in from philanthropists and people who've got $5 or $10 to share. We really are being built by a community, and that's a pretty exciting thing to know. I'm holding a little hat here just to show you my neighborhood grandma used to wear this when we gardened together. And when I was a little girl, I asked her if I could have that hat when she died. And she had it written down in her papers when she passed away to get that hat to me. I knew when I got this hat that I was probably as important to her as she was to me. And we do believe at Hope in a Future that we can strengthen the generations by bringing them together. If we don't put us baby boomers to work, we're going to miss a great resource. So please help us with this project, because this is being built by a community and we need all the help we can get. Thank you. Okay.